Hello, everyone. We got Q&A for your week number 4 lecture. I do have 2 or 3 questions from the Google Doc. And then I think we should speak about your written test number 1, right? For those of you who might be wondering if there should be a test guide, like a guidance, like for your programming test number 1, there was a guidance, a PDF guide, which I posted a week ago. So you should really check your announcement for section MMN, not the common MMO E-class, the MMN E-class site. And there was a PDF guide on the lecture site as well. It's been there for more than a week, so please take a look. But I'll speak about it as well. Okay, I'll speak it maybe after we have discussed questions related to your lecture. Let me do that first, as usual. All right, let me now just go on to talk about question by question. And then as usual, if you got any follow-up question, please just speak up, right? If you raise your hand on the Zoom, I may not be able to see you in time. All right, let's now take a look. Okay, question number 1 is more about debugging, right? So your fellow student was saying that, is there a way to use debugger on a specific JUnit test case? Yes, there is. You just got to set a breakpoint. I try to put breakpoints on the case, but when I run debugger, it just runs a different case. I'm not exactly sure what your fellow student might be referring to. If you are the one posting the questions, feel free to be more specific about what happened. But to really answer this, just in general, I can just show you very quickly about how you should set a breakpoint. Okay, quickly. I think that's really important, actually, because you do need to set a breakpoint sometimes to debug, especially now the labs are getting more and more complicated, especially you want to use arrays and also loops. So it might be often that you want to really look at the return value versus the expected value. It's quite often, all right? Let me show you quickly here. I just created something very simple. So under week number 4, I'll make the project available to you at the end of the after today. If you look at utilities over here, we just got one very simple method just to add, right? We want to add 2 numbers and return their addition. Okay, very simple. And then you can take a look over here for the JUnit test. You can see over here we got 2 tests over here. We got 2. Okay. And I would say to make it simple, you may just want to make sure there's only one breakpoint putting on a particular method. For example, if you actually want to debug, let's say this particular test, let's say at 01. So you want to put a breakpoint maybe at the first line for the test method. That'll be one way to go. And then, of course, if you simply say debug, and then you say switch to debug perspective, it's going to pause right before we execute this line. And then from then on, you will know how to step into and step over and etc. Right? So this will be particularly important for your lab number 4, because for your lab number 4, you are going to do methods related to arrays and loops. So usually when we got over here for the assert equals, we may have assert array equals, which means we want to compare the return array from your method and also the expected array. And how to compare them, you got to use the assert array equals. And the best way to really see what the return value is and what the expected value is, you want to use a debugger to see that. I kind of showed this to you for week number 5 Java tutorial video. So once you have completed that, you will be ready to do your lab number 4. Okay, just want to mention quickly. All right, that's how you set a breakpoint and then go there. I would tend to guess maybe your fellow student was asking the following question. Okay, let's say, for example, you got multiple test methods over here, and you set a breakpoint for each one of them, right? But I would still recommend you can clear all the breakpoints each time when you set a new one. So you don't need to remember all the breakpoints from before just to avoid confusion. But just in case you didn't, let me see if I remember the steps over here. Let's say hypothetically you set multiple breakpoints for your methods over here, right? And then I simply say run the debugger over here. Okay, for example, you can see now we pause at line number 13 inside at 01 method here. Let's say, for example, maybe your fellow student meant to say, I really wanted to maybe debug this method instead, this one instead, rather than this one here. But somehow the debugger is pausing over here. It's not a big deal. I would say you have 2 choices over here. Either you can simply stop the debugger and then remove this particular breakpoint and then launch the debugger again. The next time, hopefully, it will pause over here. right? That's one resolution. Of course, if you got multiple breakpoints set up for your long JUnit test, in that case, you got to remove all the previous ones before you set a new one. That'll be resolution number one. Another way to do is, let's say we simply want to skip this particular breakpoint and go to the next one. You can see there are only 2 breakpoints at the moment, and then somehow we pause over here first, simply because this method was executed by JUnit first. We want to go to the next one for execution. What you can do is you can try this one here. You can see the third button here, step return. Try that. If you click on that, it's going to, let's see over here if that might help. I think it will work in some context, but not necessarily every context. Let me try again, okay? If no, I would say we'll stick to the first resolution. Let me try one more time, okay? Let's say this, I will simply just try to run the debugger again. So now we pause over here, and if I want to jump to the next one over here, let's see if it is possible. Let me see if there's any button here. Give me just one moment. Okay, I think we only got step return. However, step return, okay, it's not really doing what I expected that to do. So I think we want to stick to the first resolution. If you really don't want to pause over here, I would suggest remove the breakpoint and then make sure this is the only breakpoint you will actually run into next time when you launch the debugger. All right, if you launch that, you will see that it's going to pause over here and then you can step into. All right, so that will be my advice to you. Okay, guys, any follow-up question to this? I think this question here is just about how you can set a breakpoint and make sure it pause at the right method you want to pause. So my advice would be set only a single breakpoint throughout the test case. Every time before you set a new one, remove all the previous breakpoint. So just to avoid confusion, that'll be my advice. Any follow-up question to this before I move on to the next one? Everybody comfortable with the using debugger? Hopefully, we are already about 4 weeks into the semester. Hopefully, you're comfortable with using debugger. I think that's really important, right? I think that the only console application is cool, and also for the final 3 or 4 weeks, we're also going to do a little bit of mobile app, so you can also see your your program running on the touch screen of your mobile device, which is also pretty cool. I would say console apps or mobile touch screen, they are both cool ways to visualize the result. However, what's going to really lead you far beyond this course will be debugger. And for all your subsequent programming courses or software design course later or project course, debugger will really be your true friend. Hopefully, you'll appreciate that later. But anyway, so Michael agreed with me. It's actually useful for labs. I'm glad. All right. All right, guys, I assume you're okay, but if you got any specific question about debugger, you can either ask me now or you can just drop by my office hour. I'll be happy to hold your hands and then try to show you how to do it, right? It's really something I want you to pick up for this course, all right? Okay, let me move on to the next one. I think this one is resolved, right? Unless you got any follow-up question. All right, let me move on. The next one over here, okay, let's see this. Let me read together with you your fellow students' question. Something about short circuit evaluation. Your fellow student understand the code for each short circuit evaluation. When they say each, they mean the conjunction and also disjunction, right? Remember, short circuit evaluation applies to both this and this, okay? One using conjunction, the other using disjunction, okay? Gives equivalent output but different behavior. Yeah, that's true. You think about short circuit evaluation is really for you to guard. Okay, so short circuit evaluation over here is really to guard, protect. Certain. Yeah, question? Yeah.
This was my question.
Michael, yes, go ahead.
It was regarding the example that you gave us.
Sure.
For short evaluation, and you said that one example used the protection from the AND statement, and the other used the protection of the OR statement.
Yeah.
You said that you should go. You should make it a self-exercise to see if the code is like between each example is equivalent. Okay. And I was just trying to understand how to do that, but I can only do it with cases. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, guys, I think it's good that Michael identified that's his question. That's nice. But I think Michael's confusion was just about how to play with to see the effects for the short circuit evaluation. I think. Okay. Good. That's fine. What I would do is. So Michael, am I getting you correctly? So you kind of understand what's going on over here. You're just not too sure how to really change the code so that you don't have either short circuit evaluation protection anymore. That's kind of your question, right?
Well, my question is that you use like the same example to showcase the short circuit evaluation for the conjunction and disjunction.
Yes.
And you said that on your own, you should go back and see like that the outputs for both versions are the same. But I was wondering if I was given this question on a test, how I would answer it. And in the original question I asked you, In the original question I asked you, I said I should like the only way I can do it is with cases.
Yeah, by test. Yeah, that's correct. So yes, Michael, that's a good question here. Okay, sure. Let's now take this conjunction example over here. Okay, so I think it really depends on how exactly I ask you, right? The question. Let me try to give you some concrete example. So here, okay, this could be one. Let's say this here. What I would do is I'm going to delete this line here. Okay, let me just write it down before I delete it. Okay, so you can contrast. What if I simply swap the order of these two lines? So what I would do is I'm going to say y divided by x larger than 2, and then also x. I'll give you two questions. Okay, let's start with the first one. Okay, that's variant number 1. Okay, variant number 1. And now let me simply just remove this expression over here. So we don't need that anymore. So guys, this example is not new. It's actually part of the notes, iPad notes I made available to you. So I'm just trying to answer Michael's question here. So Michael, so here's a question. Let's say the question is like a short answer question or essay question. So let's say this is how we set up the code. So we got this if branching condition over here, and then we got else, and then everything else stay the same. So the question is there any logical error? Is there any logical error for this program over here? Okay, so part 1 will be yes or no, right? Part 2, if you believe there's a logical error, and then give me one concrete input to prove that there's a logical error, meaning that the behavior is going to be wrong. Or if you believe there's no logical error, then explain to me how the program will work at a runtime. So that will be the question. Okay, part A and also part B, justify, right? So Michael, since you asked the question, so why don't you try? And then unless you want to yield a chance to your fellow student, but anyway, I'll let you try first. Yeah, is there any logical error here?
Well, because for example, if you use the first test inputs x equals 0, y equals 10, and knowing that the conjunction reads from left to right, the first operation y over x, is it true or false? If you divide by 0, then you'll get an undefined answer, and that will give an exception in the code.
Like a division by 0 exception. Yeah, that's good. Yes. That's good. So I think, Michael, so for part A, either I can ask you to say, is there any logical error? That would be one way to ask you. Let's say that's A1. Or I can say A2. Is the short circuit evaluation effective in this particular example? That'll be equivalent question. In this, so you basically just said, okay, let me repeat what you just said. The answer is no. So this part over here, as the branching expression over here, is actually not good, right? You can see the intention really is we want to guard any expression that's kind of fragile, especially for division, right? Let me just close this box, this expression here. So some expression we would like to guard or protect. Okay. However, as you said, it is not going to guard this particular expression if you arrange it in this order, because when you evaluate conjunction at the runtime, it's going to go from left to right. And if you are going to evaluate this left-hand side expression, let's say using this input over here, we're going to get y divided by 0. There's going to be exception right away. it will be too late when you actually evaluate this on the right hand side. You wouldn't get a chance because crash already occurred. So that would be, yes, that would be the justification, right?
Right.
So Michael, I think that would be the kind of a question I will ask you, for example, to really justify the short circuit evaluation.
Okay.
Another one, since you talk about short circuit evaluation, let me give you a little bit preview, okay, just quickly, okay? And let's say this. So typically for a short circuit evaluation, you really want to guard certain, you want to guard certain expression that might be fragile. Division is simply one example. Another example, which is even more common, is about to guard array indexing expression, right? So up to now, you should really know about what array indexing is if you have been following the tutorial videos. Okay, let me just give you one example. Okay, let's say this. Let's say I got an array over here, simply of size. Let's say 0, 1, 2. Can be as many elements as I like. So, Michael, quick question for you: what should be the last index in general?
Oh gosh.
Don't worry, it's not really covering your written test one. I just want to see if you happen to know the answer, but I just want to ask you.
I'm
not too sure to say it. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
No worries. Do you remember how to get the size of the array?
Is it?
All right. So
length. Oh yeah.
Okay, that's okay. If you forgot, that's fine. Don't worry. So eta length is how you get the size of the array. However, since the indices actually start with 0, so the last index should be eta length minus 1, right? One quick example would be if you got an array of size 2, the maximum index should be only 1, right? The size of 2 minus 1. Okay. So guys, this is something you would have to know very soon, but not for the coming written test one. Okay. Let me in case you're panicking about this thing over here. All right. But having this in mind, let's say we want to do some array indexing expression over here. For example, I might say part of the code. If I say the following, I want to make sure the indices, right? Any array index should be not too small, in the sense that it should be at least larger than or equal to 0. Excuse me, at least larger than or equal to 0 for sure, right? It cannot be too small. For example, if you got -1, it should be considered as invalid, okay? And also, it should not be too large. It should be greater than or equal, it should be less than or equal to eta length -1, right? That'll be the largest index you can get into, right? Having those two facts in mind. Now, here is a question you might be asked later. Okay, so let me put it down. So let's say we got, assuming that we got I, an integer value. Let's assume that, okay, integer I. If I say I larger than or equal to 0, and we got array A over here, right? I want to say AI is, let's say, positive, okay? And then I want to say also I should be less than or equal. I can just say strictly less than. That'll be equivalent, right? I can say strictly less than eta length. All right, and then of course I might say I want to do something over here, and then I will do something over here, right? That's a code. And here a similar question, like pretty much what I said in A2 over here. Is the short circuit evaluation effective? Is the short circuit evaluation effective? So Michael, I can let you try first. If you're not, then I can let your fellow student try as well. So now this is more like a short answer question. Is the short circuit evaluation effective for this particular branch? If yes or no, you just justify.
Ooh.
I'll give you some time, no rush.
So for conjunction, you only read the entire statement if everything is true. Once you hit a false, then it's automatically false. So that means
okay.
Which
right?
If
you're right. You're going to evaluate from left to right for sure, and then as soon as you hit the first false, you're going to conclude that the entire conjunction result is going to be false without evaluating further. That's the principle. But based on that, do you think in this particular instance over here, are we using the short circuit evaluation effectively? Are we or are we not?
I'm just wondering, if I is negative, then obviously then the I greater
let's
than or
try
equal to
example,
0.
Michael. Let's try. Okay, let's try.
Yeah.
Let's say, let's try. Let me say test number 1. Okay, if I is negative, let's say -2, -2, right? What's going to happen if we say -2? What's going to happen is -2 larger than or equal to 0, and also a -2 over here larger than 0, and also let me just write the whole thing down so you can see exactly what's happening here. And also we got -2 strictly less than eta length. All right, and if we try this, you will know that. So, Michael, what's going to happen if we evaluate this expression at the runtime? What's going to happen?
It's going to be overall evaluated to be false.
I agree. What about show me the process? What would be the process of evaluating this expression?
It would go to the if statement. I would be compared to or equal to 0, which is false already. Good. So then it would just stop. It would just stop there and just skip the body of the if statement.
Okay. So now you're saying that since this is already false, short circuit evaluation makes sure you don't need to go on to evaluate this particular expression, which is problematic. So we wouldn't get into any so-called array index out of bound exception, right? So you're saying that
yes,
this particular problematic expression will be avoided because this part is already false. Okay, I agree with you. All right. So I think for test number 1, that's very good. No problem. So which means this short circuit evaluation is effective to protect any value that is going to falsify this expression over here, meaning that any negative index I you pass into to check, it will be protected for sure. Okay. But Michael, the follow-up question, are all the inputs always safe? Or there might be a particular category of input that might get yourself into trouble?
The inputs for I in which they are negative, if there's SCE effective, then it'll be problematic.
Yeah. So okay, so we already know if the value here is simply negative, then we'll be okay because short circuit evaluation will make sure this part here is simply just false. So we wouldn't even get a chance to evaluate this. So that's good. But are all the input values okay? They will always be protected against this expression here. Or if there's any some kind of input value that will actually cause you into trouble.
If it exceeds the no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about it.
Think loud. That's okay. No problem. That's okay. Yeah. Let me give you some very specific example. Let's say A is simply, let's make it simple. 0, 1, and 2, right? And then you got some value over here. The value is not important over here, okay? And then let's say this. We know already if you give any index that's way too small, for example, -1 or -2, it's going to be protected for sure. We already do that. But what if, Michael, what if we actually got something that's too big? For example, A here, we try A4. Are we going to be protected though?
I think so, because the last part of the if statement is if I is smaller than a dot length, no?
Now we try. Let's try. So let's say we talk about test number 2. So now the value of index is 4. Let's say the 4 is exceeding the maximum index already. Let's say. So what we will do is we're gonna let's again copy this expression over here. So we got 4 larger than or equal to 0, and also A4 larger than 0, and also 4 strictly less than eta length. For our assumption over here, let's say it's 3. And indeed, you know that this expression over here is actually false. But is this useful though?
What do you mean useful?
Oh, well, useful in the sense that is this false able to protect us from indexing into the array with a very large index?
Oh, but if the middle statement, would that be valid because A4 doesn't exist?
No, it wouldn't be valid. Okay, think about, remember you said before, you're going to evaluate from left to right. So this will be the first expression to be evaluated. And that one there is going to be true or false, this one here. That's obviously true. According to the short circuit effects, right? If the this operand is already true, do we need to evaluate further or not?
We have to.
We have to, right? Remember, yeah, good. We only stop evaluating if the current operand is already false. But since it's true, of course, we're gonna go on. And the next one is this guy over here, meaning that before we can check this protecting constraint, we already have to evaluate the thing that should be protected. You see, the order is wrong.
Yes.
Meaning that for case number one, it demonstrates for some input value that's way too small, like a negative number, this particular branching condition will be able to protect it. However, when we get to test number two, another category of input, if the input value is way too big, in that case, it's too late when you check it, because the order of evaluation is going to be evaluate this, and then evaluate this, and then evaluate this. So when you only check this in the third order, that'll be too late already. So Michael, it makes sense to you somehow?
So then for you, would you switch the third and the second part?
Yeah, so now we talk about fix, right? So now the fix, what should be the fix? The fix should be, basically, you want to put all the guarding constraint, all the protection constraint before the actual expression that should be protected. So so guys, if you're saying too late, you want to swap, exactly. So you're definitely following me. So what you would do is I will still put this guy over here, I larger than or equal to 0, and another protecting constraint will be I strictly less than a dot length, and then, okay, let me put it here, and then also ai larger than 0. So this will make sure before I try to evaluate this actual expression over here, the two expression that comes before that, this one and this one here, they will make sure it's protected properly. Because if any one of them that evaluate to false, they will make sure you don't even get a chance to evaluate this one that comes the last.
Professor?
Question?
Yes, Professor.
Yes,
I was wondering, will it be a viable solution as well to switch to like now with the first fix to switch the first and second one, or will that cause problems too?
You mean these two?
Yeah.
I think for these two, doesn't matter if you check this first or you check this first, doesn't matter, because the idea will be before you actually evaluate this expression over here, you want to make sure all the previous constraint can properly guard the I over here to be neither too small nor too big. Whether you check the too small or too big, which one first doesn't matter. You can definitely switch these two if you wish.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So guys, I think if you kind of follow this, then congratulations. You kind of understand some lectures ahead, which will come up at the end of the reading week. But if you kind of get an idea, but somehow a little bit too complicated, that's okay. I'm kind of drawing things from scratch right now, so kind of not so systematic. So I think once you get to the lecture for week number 6, you will actually see this. But this is like a natural extension to what we just spoke about for short circuit evaluation. So I would say for this course, the most common use cases for short circuit evaluation will be number 1 for division, okay, and also number 2 for array indexing, like this guy over here. So the idea will be before the expression you want to protect, you want to make sure you check all the guarding constraint using either conjunction or disjunction, right? So Michael, I hope that's kind of an answer also your original question. I just try to give you more examples, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right. Guys, any more follow-up question to short circuit evaluation? Any more? Of course, for the short circuit evaluation, number 1, you should know the principle, right? I will discourage you to really just memorize about the principle. So as long as you really understand what the truth table is for conjunction, disjunction, everything is really derived from that, right? So I would say just understand the reasoning. I think that's more important. Okay. Any follow-up question to this about short circuit evaluation? Anyone? All right, and then I'll presume everybody's okay. Okay. So Michael, would it be okay if I skip the disjunction over here, or you want me to talk about it as well?
No, I understand a lot from your example, so it's okay.
Okay, very good, very good. You know what, Michael, just for fun. Okay, I'll put it here just for completeness, right? We know that in order for you to check for array indexing,
okay.
You can think about it. I'll just put it down over here. You got here I larger than or equal to 0, and also I strictly less than a dot length, assuming that a is an array, and also ai, let's say, for example, larger than 0, right? So we are basically protecting this particular expression using this and also this. All right. So now, let's just do together very quickly. So Michael, so now let's say I still want to protect this expression over here, array indexing. Is it possible to rewrite the entire Boolean expression here using disjunction? Meaning that.
Well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, no. I'll just do some scaffolding over here, and then you can do the rest. Go ahead.
Well, my first thought is, yeah, my first thought is that, well, I don't think it's possible, because if you're just trying to use the exact same conditions, I is greater than or equal to 0 and I is less than a dot length, then
yeah, very good. I agree with you.
Right.
We cannot just copy and paste the expression. We cannot. Well, think about. Yeah, you're very right. If I simply do this, I larger than or equal to 0, and also I less than a dot length. It's a very good. This can. This may not be happening for sure. It's not going to happen on Wednesday, but this can be a potential question. Either for the written test or exam, potentially, right? So now let's version number 1. Where I simply copy this one here and copy this one here. Tell me what's wrong with this. Why would this not protect this array indexing expression here? Why not?
Oh, do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I guess the first case would be an I that's greater than the actual length of the array.
Let's say I is simply 8. Let's say just 8 length, right? Just basically 1 off. Right. So this is too large. Okay, let's say. And what's going to happen?
So then you would read the first expression, which is I is greater than or equal to 0.
That would be true.
Because it's true, and because of short circuit effects, the entire OR statement is considered true, regardless if the other two are false or true. So then you just skip, and then and sorry, you don't skip, but because it's true, you go into the body.
Go into the body. Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. This one here is too large. Yeah, that's true. However, you know what? This one's actually okay. But what if, yes, you'll be true, so you go onto the body. Okay. Go to the body of maybe the if, for example, right? So what about another one? What about I is negative?
Yeah, I is negative. Then the left expression will be evaluated to be false. So then, because that, then you need to evaluate the next expression of the entire statement, and then you see that I is less than a dot length, which is true. So
negative is always less than some positive number. Length is guaranteed not to be negative, of course. Right. So that'll be false. Yes, exactly. So I think, Michael, you're definitely right. So you can see, you were given this particular question over here about why it is wrong. I think the fact that you try to explain that when I is actually just too large, in this case, the first one would just be true. In that case, you're really protecting this expression over here by going directly into the branch without evaluating it. So that's not really explaining why it's not working. However, the second example you went through, the second one over here, when I is negative, this is really the answer. Because when I is negative, so that means you're going to evaluate this to be true, meaning that you're going to go ahead to evaluate the next one. And then this one here is also true because a.length is guaranteed to be larger than or equal to 0. That's definitely larger than some negative number. In that case, it will also be true. False. Beg your pardon. Just confusing you. False and false. And then, so that means you will still evaluate this particular expression. So that will actually give you the array index out of bound exception. Okay. All right. So that means you will still evaluate this. So that will give you the crash.
Sorry, Professor.
Yeah.
I thought the middle condition, if I is negative, would be true because it's negative and it's smaller than a.length.
It is.
Am I being...
Let me take a look over here. You know, Michael, let me double check this particular example here. I think there might be something that's missing from here. You know what? For now, let me say this. Let me discuss this properly in the lecture. I think there will be some intermediate detail which I forgot to explain. But let's not take this too far because this is not really covered this time. All right? Let me discuss this in your lecture properly.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. But what you just said was actually right. So I think I meant to really present to you maybe something a little bit different to really show you what the lesson. But I think what you said so far is actually right. But that's not really what I meant to show you for the example. Okay. Let me discuss the complete story in the lecture. Otherwise, we're going to take too long on this one here. All right. All right, guys. I think that for your Wednesday written test, right, I will talk about it in more detail. But what you should know is about a simple case of using the short circuit. That's the main thing. All right. As for this array indexing short circuit evaluation, I will give you the complete story once we get to week number 6. Right. For now, you don't need to worry. Okay. But just to give you some look ahead. All right. All right. So let me go on. Okay. Now, the last question for your fellow student, I believe this is from Ali. So I wonder if Ali is here. So he can also ask me this question here on the forum. We had some little bit discussion there. But I wonder if he's here today, so I can also clarify further. If not, I'll just explain this quickly. Okay. All right. So this question here is about the so-called dangling else, right? That's one of the common errors that we spoke about in the selections lecture. So it will be called dangling else. The dangling else problem. Okay. Conceptually, if you write anything like this, you can see here we simply got if over here without the curly brackets. If we have, then in that case we can disambiguate, but we didn't have it, so that's why it's ambiguous. Excuse me, it's ambiguous. We got if over here, and then we followed by some if, and then some else, right? And also the same block of code. So now we want to see why conceptually this is ambiguous, right? Let me just explain again, but in case you got follow-up question, let me know. Let's see, we start with this particular first line. Okay, that'll be the first line. All right. Since there is no curly brackets, right? Remember what we said before. When there is no, for the if, right? If you simply don't put any curly brackets, and then the very first line following that will be the body for the if, right? That's something we said previously in the lecture. Okay. The same principle over here will apply. But I would say, think about, when I say single line, it's simply because for that particular example, it's really easy to see visually. That's only the first line, like a print statement. But in principle, it should be the first statements after this if should be considered as its body. Okay, the first single statements should be considered as the body for this particular if. So now we want to see what that single statement is. However, we got ambiguity over here because if you look at what's left over here, so you got if and also else. You got if and then else. We don't really know what this single statement should be because the single statement could be just up to here. This can be the single statement. Remember we spoke before, for the if statements, it could be as small as just like a single if. If we do this, the whole thing will still make sense because that simply means this particular else will simply belong to the if. So that'll be one possible interpretation. Okay, that's one possible interpretation. In this case, you can think about the pink if over here is the body of the if. Okay, that's one interpretation. Another interpretation would be the if and else, both parts will be considered as a single statements, right? When we talk about the syntax for if statements, it can be either just a single if, W1 case, or it could be if following as many else if as you like, and then eventually followed by an else, right? So these are the two cases. You can think about case number 2 is like the longer case I talk about over here, all right? In both cases, the pink one is really considered as the body of the if. However, you can see they're different because here the body simply contains just an if without the else. But in the second case, it contains the if and else altogether. So that's why when you try to evaluate the same output, it will be different. Let's try this very quickly, and then I'll take a question. Let's say here we got 20 over here, right? So if you got 20 evaluated, so 20 larger than 0 will be true. So you're going to evaluate this one as well. So 20 larger than 100 is going to be false. So which means we don't evaluate this, but we got nothing else. And then the else part is not going to be executed because we go into this if, right? So the output is going to be nothing. Okay, so output, I'll just put empty over here, right? Just going to be empty. On the other hand, if you try the second one over here, if you try 20 over here, and then I say 20 larger than or equal to 0 is true. So evaluate this. So now 20 larger than 100 is going to be false. But since this else belongs to this if, so when the if branch is actually false, we can still go to the else as a default. So which means it's going to print out this particular line over here. So the output for this case would be x is negative. Right? You can see for the same piece of code, conceptually, you can either interpret this way, where the output is simply empty, or the output can be x is negative, right? So that's why it's ambiguous. Okay, and then one thing to say, okay, which interpretation will be taken by Java? They got some heuristics. You can try to really see which one will be the actual result. Actually, this code will compile in Java, even though it is ambiguous, because Java compiler will simply take whatever they think should be the reasonable way to really interpret this program. I forgot it's either this one or this one. You can try, okay? But I think what's more important is for you to see why it will be ambiguous conceptually, because either this part over here is the body of the if, or this entire thing over here is the body for the if. That's the lesson to learn. Okay. Guys, any question to this one here? I know this one is a little bit tricky, but I think, yeah, it's important to know, right? You just got to be careful. If you really meant to put, let's say, this particular version over here, you should really put curly brackets over here. Oh, sorry. You should really put curly brackets here and also curly brackets here, right? If you really meant to do this version over here, you should really put curly brackets here and then curly brackets here. You should really use the curly brackets whenever possible to disambiguate conceptually, okay? All right, any question following to this about ambiguity? Anybody?
Professor?
Yes.
I just wonder, didn't you say that if you don't include curly brackets for your if statements, then only the first line underneath the if statement is going to be evaluated as the body of that statement? Then how can you have like an entire if statement
That's a good point. It's actually because for that particular example, remember that particular example I said over here, if something like this, and then I didn't put any curly brackets, and then I simply say maybe one single line over here, and then another single line maybe for calculation, and then like that, right? So that's why for that particular example, it's easy to see line by line, but each line is also a statement at the same time. So the more precise way I should have said, but just for that particular example, I thought saying line will be more understandable to you. So you can think about here, the line itself is also the statements. For example, usually, for example, for assignment statements or for print statement, you will only occupy a single line. So in that case, yes, line is just the same as statement. However, In this case over here, is slightly more sophisticated. So a single line over here, you can see, well, what's the next line? Just this. This is not a complete statement over here. So you cannot really say this single line here is simply the body of this particular if statement. Because if this was the body for that particular statement, this should not even compile. Because you only got if x larger than 0 and the openings curly brackets without the closing brackets. So it wouldn't make sense to treat this as the body for the if. So the more complete way of saying that is the single statements after this if without the curly brackets should be considered as its body. So now what should be that single statements? The statement may occupy more than one line. For example, we got if statements. We also got loop statements. Those will actually typically take more than one line. So here you can see either this can be the single if statements or this can be the single if statement, either way, right? They're both fine according to our definition for the if statement. So that's why it's ambiguous.
Okay.
Okay. Makes sense to you, Michael?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Very good. All right, guys. Any other questions about this ambiguity issue over here? Okay, I presume everybody's okay. All right. All right. So that's about what I have seen in the Google Doc. Do you guys have any more questions related to the lecture? I can take them now. Anyone?
So for actually it's for the ambiguity thing. So if you
ambiguity here, yeah, okay, yeah.
So for the first part, you know how it's like indented, its first if statement, it's indented inward, where you have like two options on how it might go through. For the second part, is it, well, for the else, since it's not indented?
Very good question. So Mary, so so here's I think it is something I mentioned also in the lecture, so maybe you missed that part. So when we talk about indentation, so here you can see the way we indented over here suggests to any human reader that it should be this case particularly rather than this case, because if it should be this case over here, we would have actually indent the else part into over here. We will start the else over here and then put it here. It is true, but only for human readers. For a computer, when Java compiler try to compile your code, they simply disregard any indentation you put. So indentation that we put or any comments we put in your code, they do not make any impact to the compiler. So the more, okay, so let me just make it even more precise to you. Okay, so now if you think about, let me just make it a new page over here. This one is a little bit advanced. I think later on, because you guys are in the CS, you will learn about something called context-free grammar. Okay, let me just give you a little bit look ahead for the future. Something called context-free grammar. So this is about how you can define a grammar for programming languages. You will learn about this in 2001. I mean, not year, I mean EECS 2001. The introduction to the theory of computation, right? That's something you learn about theoretically. And later on, if you're interested in building a compiler yourself, so there's another course called EECS1022, Compiler's Interpreter. So these will explore this idea further, okay? But let me just focus on this particular one. So when you write this particular program here with nice indentation over here, however, the way computers see it will just be a single line of program, something like this. If x larger than 0, and then followed by if x larger than 100. And then you got something over here. And then we got else. That's basically what a computer will see. And then, so maybe this way, it will be easier to see the ambiguity, right? Let's say, let me just copy this line over here, okay? So that means either, okay, let's say we start with this guy over here without the opening and curly brackets, right? So now how do we see the following single statement? It can be either just this guy over here, or it can be if else. Does it make sense to you, Mary?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought I was muted.
Okay, good. Yeah. So yeah. So the lesson here is indentation that we put as a human writer do not make any impacts to the compiler. Compiler will always disregard the indentation. So Mary, is that okay? We got any follow-up question?
No, I think that was okay. Thank you.
All right, very good. All right, any more questions about the lecture? All right. If no, I can speak briefly about the written test number 1. Okay, briefly. If you in terms of the study guide, there was a study guide. I believe most of you should really see that. I do have some inquiry from your fellow students. They were wondering whether there should be a study guide for the written test. If you go to the E-class site for MMN, not a common one for also with section O, just MMN. If you go there and go to course announcement, there was an announcement over here sent about a week ago about a guide to written test 1. Right? So if you get there, so that's in the lecture site, actually. If you go there, that's the guidance for written test number 1, talking about the coverage and also the formats. All right? You can read it. I don't need to just read it together with you, but you can see the coverage over there. Okay, that's something I want to mention first. Okay, and then it will be quite important for you to know how to trace the code. It will be quite important. Okay, let me say something quickly. There will be questions where I'll simply give you some Java code and then ask you what the output is to the console, for example. Since it's like an open book test, it will be allowed if you simply just want to type some code into Eclipse and then simply run the code and then see what the output is. I think that's okay since we don't have any way to check. However, you don't really want to do this for every question that's asked in the test. In that case, you wouldn't get enough time to really finish your test. I think I really meant to have all the output question, like for example, the question where if they simply ask you what the output is. I really meant for you to really trace the code on the paper. It will be much faster than simply typing them out and see what the output is from Eclipse. Okay, that'll be my advice to you. Okay, you can try, but you may not be able to do so for every question that's asking you about how to trace the Java code. Okay. All right, so that's about the guide I would like to talk about, right? Other than that, I think everything else was made clear on the guide. So if you got any question about written test, you can ask me now if you wish. Any questions? I'll pause a bit.
Yeah, is that document you showed us before on the Moodle?
It's on the E-class and also it's on the lecture site.
What is it called?
What do you mean?
What's the name of the file?
It's called, just go to the announcement over there and then you will see.
Where's announcements? It's called written test 1. I don't see any written test 1 in the announcements.
Can you see this announcement here?
Guides to written test 1. Let me try to find it.
Make sure MMN section.
You want to go to this MMN E-class site.
Oh, MNN. Yeah, I'm in the wrong section.
Mm-hmm. But you should have received an email anyway, because all the announcement will be sent to your email for sure.
Yeah, but I get so many emails that I can't remember.
Well, everybody got so many emails, right? So you gotta be selective, right? When the announcement is from me, you better pay attention to it.
All right, I found it. Thank you.
Okay, very good, man. All right, yeah.
So it says here that Yeah,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it's so is this gonna be done on like E-class? So like
It will be done on
um
E-class, yes. You know what? I can show you quickly over here. Well, at the moment, it's still hidden from you, right? So I'm going to send an announcement reminder either tonight or tomorrow morning. Don't worry. Basically, I'm going to remind everybody on the day of the test, you need to log into the MMN E-class site, not the MMO, right? You want to go there, and then you will see there will be a written test. For now, you don't see it. It's still hidden. I'm still constructing the test myself, but you will see something like this. Under the written tests section there will be a pre-test, pretty much like a pre-test for your programming test number one. Okay. After you have completed it, and then you will be able to take written test one. So basically, oh, I don't mind clicking on that. You will see that there will be 30 minutes given, right? As we said in the syllabus. It will be open. It will be enabled Wednesday, February 10th. It will be disabled Thursday, February 11th, right? But of course, once I make it available, maybe I'll make it available maybe late on Tuesday, so you will be able to see that. You wouldn't compromise any time you will get.
oh,
Make sense to you?
and
Yeah.
yes. So where you said it's like 60% of it is multiple choice, so that's just well, it's that. But the
So yeah,
other
so what I said over here, yeah, let me go there since you're reading it. I said at least 60%. I haven't decided completely yet, but I think that most of the question will be multiple choice. It could be that all the questions are multiple choice, or it could be that some there will be some written questions. So I would say you want to focus on just studying the lecture notes and also the tutorials.
so if let's say that there is a written question where we have to type out our own code, are we allowed
If
to type it out in Java first and then just copy and paste what we wrote in
yeah,
Java
that's fine.
into
That's fine. So your question was, yeah. So you're basically okay. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay. You were asking what if the question is to write some fragment Java code. So I would say typically if that's in the context of a written test or in the context of an exam, if we want you to write a fragment of Java code, it's we will be slightly more tolerant about the syntax for the code. So you don't really have to make sure it's perfectly compilable like for the programming test. So if you really prefer to really type the code on the Eclipse first, it's up to you if you wish. But I would say I wouldn't do so myself because that will take myself more time.
Okay.
Mhm.
Professor,
Yes.
may I ask, it specifies in the guide that
Yeah.
Java tutorials will be testable, but not the lab assignments. So
yeah, correct.
so that means like only like the concepts of the
Correct.
lab
That's
assignments.
concepts. Yeah, especially
Okay.
yeah, Michael, especially you're right. Let me show it to you. Yeah, I said you don't need to study the lab assignment. Yeah, I really meant it, right? You don't need to. Okay, and then I would say focus on for each one of them about the example of tracing the code, which I did. So that's something you will see quite a bit. All right.
Okay.
And also, as I said, maybe for certain questions, if you simply just want to launch Eclipse and then simply type some code and check the output, I would say that's okay. But you have to know that sometimes tracing using a piece of paper or simply by looking at the code manually, it might be faster than typing the code and then launch and then run it on the Eclipse. So you have to balance the time. You only got 30 minutes.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
can I ask, are we allowed to jump from question to question, or is it sequential?
I thought about it, but I thought it's too mean. So you can definitely jump from question to question. Yes, meaning that if you move on from question 1 to question 2, it is okay for you to move back. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
How many questions are in the test?
How many? As I said, I'm still constructing the questions. I don't know yet. Maybe I can. I can only say maybe. I cannot promise. Between 10 and 20.
And are all the questions going to take approximately the same amount of time?
Nope. I think some question will be quite straightforward. You should be able to answer them rather quickly. And some other question might take a little bit more time. Like I say,
so they'll be like
on average, maybe a few minutes for each question, on average.
So So there'll be a bunch of multiple choice, and then there'll be some questions that says write code to do this.
Well, I don't want to get into specifics for the test, but sometimes for the multiple choice, right? Unless you just guess, sometimes multiple choice can take quite a bit of time as well. So I would say, since you can always jump the question and then come back later. So I would say, when you look at the question there, if you believe you can answer that right away, just do it now. If you find that it might take you much more time than other questions, you may just want to skip that for the moment and then come back later.
And come back later.
Yeah, it's
So
definitely
for our
fine. So
code-
it's not really sequential order. So you can definitely come back in whatever order you like. Yeah.
So for our code, are you just gonna check that it works? Or are you gonna like make sure that it's clean and neat as well?
We wouldn't check the structure of your code if you're asked to write any code. I think if we really ask you to write any code manually, which may or may not be the case, but since I said larger than 60% will be multiple choice, right? It could be 100%. I don't want to commit at the moment. So you just want to get prepared if you're asked to write some code. And if you're really asked to write some code, then that means some TA will actually look into your code and then to judge whether your code is actually correct. But if you, some minor syntax error will be okay. For example, if you miss a semicolon, if you spelled the string type rather than capitalized S, it's a lowercase s, that'll be okay. You wouldn't lose any marks by making minor mistakes. I think we'll focus more on whether the code in general is correct.
Okay. So you focus more on the logic, right?
Correct. That's
okay.
Right.
You said it will focus on tracing, but there will be like just some questions where you ask about general concepts, like is this a double, or like just not all of them will be like complete, like tracing over the entire code
tracing
and
will be
stuff,
a
right?
very important part, but not necessarily all the question will be about tracing, not necessarily. Yeah. So there will be some easy questions which should be quite easy to answer right away. So there might be some tracing question. Yes, there might be. Yeah. There might also be some other questions, that will take a little bit of thinking, for sure. So Mark, you got your hand raised for a long time. So do you want to speak up?
Yeah.
Please.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So on the written test 1 guide, you can see that it says it's from week 1 to week 4, but when you go further down, you'll see lecture 1 to lecture 3, but you won't see lecture 1 to lecture 4. Is lecture 4 included?
There's no lecture 4 so far. You can see lecture 3. Yeah. Well, somehow, I want to be as precise as possible. When I say week number 1 to week number 4, what I meant was this. So you can see the way we organize the table over here for you, right? It's week number 1, which cover entirely lecture 1. But for week number 2, we only cover a part of lecture 2. We didn't finish that. And then for week number 3, we finished lecture 2, and then we started, actually we only finished lecture 2. And then for week number 4, we finished lecture 2, and then we started partly the lecture 3, right? And then for, so only up to here. So there's no lecture 4.
Oh, okay. I thought like lectures were like the weeks, like there's
not really.
1 week, and then there's 1 lecture, and okay. Right.
Yeah. So when I say lecture, you can think about it more like a units. So unit number 4 will be about classes and objects, which we will speak about after the reading week. You don't need to worry about it this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. So guys, I think for the written test, I think as long as you have been following the, as long as you've been following the lectures and also understand the concept, and also for tutorials, especially about a tracing perspective, then I think you should be okay. That's what I think. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I do have a question. Sorry. I can't get anything from York, like any website from York, to open on my laptop.
Really?
And I updated it, and I downloaded Google Chrome because I thought it was like from my browser.
Oh.
But I still can't open anything.
Oh, Master, you sent me an email previously, right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah. So you sent me an email previously about this problem, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any
for
that I
me,
should call?
you can see I can get access to, for example, eClass.
Mm.
Let's see YorkU. I can also go there. Let's try another one. Register the office, register office site. That's also fine. So guys, are you experiencing any problem of accessing eClass?
Oh, I
No
had
one
a
else
problem
seems
this
to
morning.
be.
If you say earlier this morning, yes, there was a problem earlier this morning, but I think the university took a very quick measure to fix it. So I think it's been fixed. Maybe since 11 o'clock, I think. It's been fixed for many
Yeah,
hours
is there
already.
anyone that I could contact about this? Because I tried everything I could think of.
So you're saying you still cannot get any, cannot get access to the site right now?
No, any website. I even tried your lecture website and I couldn't.
So what does it show? It
access that
simply
either.
show the site is not there, or?
It says Safari can't find the server, and for Google Chrome,
I wonder if there might be any network issue over there. You know what? Maybe yeah, actually, you know what? I'm not too sure. You know what? Maybe try again, maybe a little bit later. I'm not too sure. I would tend to think there might be a network problem, maybe from your side, because from now I can definitely get access to the site for me.
yeah. So is there anyone that I can contact about it?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can try. Although they might just simply ask you maybe to contact your network service provider. Give it. You know what? I would suggest this. Send me an email about this problem over here, and then I will forward that to our tech team, and then ask them if they got any advice to see. And then when you send me the email, could you please send a screenshot of what the problem is, and then we'll see.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
But don't worry, I think you still got tonight, and so tomorrow the test is on Wednesday. Hopefully, it will be sorted out. Hopefully. Yeah. But you may want to at the same time to make sure your network is actually working fine. Okay.
I'm connecting on a different laptop, and I would do the test on this laptop, but it's not reliable, and I feel like it's gonna freeze in the middle of the test.
Yeah, I don't know. So you may just want to find whatever machine that may be more stable for you. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I think something about how many questions there might be in the test. So when I said between 10 and 20, so that's only a rough estimate. So I think when I review the test, I will try to think about whether what will be reasonable. As I said, some question will be very easy. It will take you less than 10 seconds to complete, and other question might take a little bit longer for sure. So so focusing too much on a number of questions may not be too useful, right? So I'll try to judge for you before the test. All right. Any more questions?
Oh, yeah. Just to make sure, this is like for the test, like we it's still open book, right? Like we can use all of your notes, your iPad notes, all that.
You mean for written test 1?
Yeah.
Yes, correct. It is open. It's open book. Yeah, for written test, you can use any of your lecture notes, tutorial notes. Yes, that's correct. There's some question here about whether we can. Okay. Okay, Michael, see you later. And then for Sarah, is it possible to post all the test 1 questions so we can practice? I think that I need to discuss this maybe with the other instructor, but I'll tend not to, because for the test questions, for our side, we may want to reuse them maybe later in the later semester. So for the test question, we may want to just keep that from our side. But if you want to see want to go over some solution about your test, you can feel free to drop by my office hour. I'll be happy to discuss with you. But we may not post all the questions for your programming test. Okay. Armin, question.
Can we watch the tutorial videos on the test?
Yes, you may. Although I really hope you wouldn't have to watch too much during the test, right? It's time consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, but Armin, you can watch any tutorial videos. Yes, that's definitely fine. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right, guys. If no more questions, okay. You will definitely receive an announcement from me, either later tonight or tomorrow. I'm gonna give you some final reminder about what you should really watch out for your written test. But number one, you want to make sure you go to the NNN site for taking the test. Right? I'll make it clear in the announcement. Please just check your email either tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay, I'll send an email reminder.
Oh, for the questions where we have to trace your code, you said that we're allowed to put it into Java, but like it will only be fragments. So like
yeah, it will only be fragment. Yeah, it will be, for example, I can give you one example here. So maybe in the question itself, I give you some variable declaration, maybe I, j, and k. And then I simply say, now let's say system the outer print line, I plus j plus k, let's say, for example. And then what's the console output? So that's the question. And you might be given different choices about what the output should be, and then choose the correct choice. And now you got two options here to do this question. Either you can simply look at the expression there, I plus j plus k, and then you can maybe do a little bit calculation on the paper if you need, and then you will be able to answer right away. Option number two, if you really want, you can try to maybe create a console application from scratch, and then put all the necessary variable declaration, whatever, and then launch the program, and then see what the output is to the console, and then try to find a match in the choice. That'll be option number two. I would say both options are acceptable for the quiz. For the test. Since we don't really invigilate, both are acceptable. However, I wouldn't recommend you go for option number two for every question like this, because that's going to be more time consuming than you actually try to trace the code, maybe on a paper, I think.
Yeah, because for option number two, you wouldn't actually give us everything that we needed to just
Correct.
copy and paste directly into Java.
Exactly.
You have to type it out.
To be honest with you, in this year, since we're running completely online, right? We gotta deal with whatever format we are running. I can tell you that in the previous year, when I was running a test like this, I was simply, just for fairness, I just asked students, you just cannot launch the Eclipse, just to make sure you only rely on the tracing on the paper if you wish, right? However, since this year we don't really invigilate, I think, to be fair, we just say we open the option for you. If you really think you want to run the output from the Eclipse, if you type very fast, I would say that's okay if that works for you.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll see how test number one goes, right? We still got another two, so if there's anything that I need to adjust, I will consider, right? Just for the first one. Armin, any more questions? Your hand's still raised.
Oh, that was from before.
Okay. All right, guys, any more questions for me? All right. I think, I think for the programming test, for sure, we definitely want you to write code that will work, that will pass the JUnit test, that doesn't have any compilation error. For the written test, it's more about, given the code, you don't need to write too much. Given the code, what should be the behavior? and also given some code, you want to judge to see whether it is correct or not, right? That's more of the nature for the written test. So it's different focus. Yeah. All right. If no more questions, I don't see any more. For example, yeah, okay. More? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just thought about it, but you wouldn't have any question like what button do you have to press to like debug or anything, right? Like nothing like that.
Yeah, so yeah, the specific one you're talking about, what buttons you have to click. For example, you're gonna say maybe run as maybe debug as Java app, debug as Java application, and then which panel to click. No, you don't need to. That one's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there are no questions like that where you're just asking like, oh, like what would you do to debug this or anything, right?
For this one, no. I can for this one specifically, I can say no.
Yeah. So like no well, yeah.
Yeah, for this one, I can tell you no. Yes.
I'm muted, sorry. So it's just based on questions like for our concepts from this elementary programming, like for variables, statements, ifs and loops.
Yep. Elementary
Like, it wouldn't
programming
be-
selections and also the loops, right? Remember, the loops is until slide 21, I believe, something like that.
So nothing about GitHub or how to access our remote labs
Nope,
or
nothing about it.
Oh,
I
like
think that's also set in the guide. No, nothing about it.
yeah, and like nothing about debugging, nothing about
Oh, you know what? For debugging, you know what? Nothing about what buttons you had to click for the debugger for sure. On the other hand, let me see. I don't want to further confuse you. Okay, nothing about debugger. That's okay. You can take my words for that. For this test, nothing about debugger. Yes.
nothing about the debugger.
Nothing about debugger for this test.
And JUnit test, because technically we talked about that in week 1, but it wouldn't be about like just the programming.
It wouldn't be about programming JUnit test per se. No, it wouldn't be about it. No.
So nothing
Yep.
for JUnit tests, nothing about debugger or anything before that, like GitHub or anything. Okay.
Correct. That's correct. All right. Anything else? All right, guys. If nothing else, then yeah, I still got tomorrow. If you want to come, you're welcome to. Otherwise, yeah, I think you can expect to receive a announcement from me later today or tomorrow. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording if no more questions. All right, I'm gonna stop now. Thank you for coming, and then I'll see you later. If not tomorrow, then good luck to your test. All right, talk to you later.